It is now 1:30. Is Dave? Is Dave here? We can just get started, I guess. Waiting for people to filter in. Oh, he's walking in now. Awesome. Okay, it's 1:30. We're gonna go ahead and reconvene our budget workshops under the guidance of our awesome Dave Del Quadro. Intrepid,
Yeah.
the amazing, the
Flattery will
incredible.
get you everywhere.
That's what we're hoping.
So, Scott, you want to lead out, or is turn it over to Catherine first?
Hi.
No, I'm actually going to turn it over to
Okay, awesome.
Jared. Lisa's on her way. Yeah.
Down goes forward. Thank you, everyone, for letting us come here and present our budget this afternoon. Just wanted to recognize Jared Steffi, our department fiscal administrator, and then we have all of our division directors and some of their management and their fiscal managers here as well. So thank them for all of the work that's gone into our budget presentation. So for Public Works and Municipal Services, we did a little theme on our budget presentation of who are the people in your neighborhood. Just because we have all of these people that go out into the community and make a big difference and sometimes go unrecognized, and it's fun to just highlight a little bit of what they do. So, this is not down.
Who's the poet?
Oh, these poems came from all of our different divisions.
They're awesome.
I can't, it's not working. There we go. Okay. Oh,
It takes a second. It's a little,
okay.
it's a little slow.
So first of all, just a summary of our expenses and revenues in our department. So animal services expenses and revenues on their enterprise fund come mainly from their contracts with the contract cities, as well as fees and licensing. On the general fund side of animal services, they do get revenue from the general fund. And then we also have $38,000 of revenue that they're pulling from their donation fund, but it's being implemented in the general fund side of their division. Public Works Operations is fully contract cities and the MSD. They do work for, yeah.
I actually have a question. Do they have 501c3 for them as well, or no?
Animal services, we had talked about that. Talia, you?
We used to have one, and now it's an endowment.
Oh. So you do have an endowment that you get some money off of. Okay, and people can contribute to that endowment. Good to know.
Thank
Do
you.
we have that on the website and stuff, and do we let people know that?
Yeah, and I'll send all of you.
That's awesome. Thank you. Okay.
So just to highlight with Public Works Operations, they contract for full services for the MSD, Taylorsville, Mill Creek, and Holiday. But they also provide services to almost every city in the valley except for Salt Lake City. We do all of the traffic signals on all of the non-UDOT roads. So we've got over 300 traffic signals they maintain, and then we do some a la carte services for various cities as well. Flood control engineering, fully funded by the flood control tax levy, both revenues and expenses there. And then flood control projects, you'll see the expenses is high there because that includes all of their carryover projects as well as their transformational initiative projects, and only adding about $600,000 of new project money through the revenues through their tax levy this year. Fleet management, the expenses are at 27 million with revenues at 21 million. Their revenues are down this year because for the year of 2025, they are not imposing the vehicle replacement levy on all of their customers. And to help with budgets throughout the county, the vehicle replacement levy is being reduced for 1 year. And that's why you'll see the revenues lower in fleet management. And then solid waste management, Lisa Hartman will talk more about them, but then their expenses and revenues are shown here as well. So these figures are shown as reported at the council stage. And then finally, that bottom bullet point, Public Works Engineering, which is Cade's division has flood control engineering and Public Works Engineering. The Public Works Engineering side of his division is going over to the MSD, and that represents about a third of the employees. And we have in the budget packet, we have them in at the 2024 budget level because there will be some closeout items that have to take place at the beginning of 2025, and then those will get trued up once we have finished closeout of that budget.
Okay.
It's not advancing. Okay, this slide just is to show an example of all of our sources of revenue that we get in our department. So we do get some general fund property tax, flood control property tax, contract revenue, fee revenue, intra-fund revenue from other county agencies, grants, royalties, enterprise fund interest, miscellaneous revenue sources like recycling, donations and endowment fund interest in animal services, and then we do have some transformational initiative funding. Okay, the animal control officer is a person in your neighborhood. Oh, an animal control officer keeps you safe from harm, from disease or critters who will bite your arm. They connect with your missing pets and help injured ones get to vets.
Madam Chair, I was expecting Scott to sing that.
I know.
I promise there will be no singing.
I mean, Mayor, we probably could help him out there.
Okay. So on the contract funded side, the side of animal services that is not general fund, some of the budget reductions, there's a reduction in the OPEB charges, and you'll see this on all of the divisions. The calculation that came from Mayor's Finance for OPEB went down this year. Also, fleet capitalization, and that is the reduction, not having to contribute to the vehicle replacement fund for 1 year. That's a $76,000 reduction. The revenue changes, just anticipated contract revenue increase with our contract renewals we do each year. And so expenses, radio license and shop, VEC, urban wildlife and fleet expenses, and then outside vet services, we're pulling $150,000 out of the injured animal donation fund to cover those services. The veterinarian is the person in your neighborhood. Oh, a veterinarian cares for cats and dogs, snakes and fish and birds and even hogs. They ensure that your pets won't mate, and some injuries they amputate. So additional expenses on the contract side of the budget. So the next three are pulling out of our donation funds. Well, the next two are pulling from donation funds, $180,000 for medical supplies and $18,000 for a licensing campaign. And then out of our reserve fund, kind of a capital reserve fund we are doing a roof replacement. And then there is a market-based grade change that came out of HR and recommended by HR. And then a new structure for additional kennels. The shelter is just overflowing and we just need more room. So we're looking at kind of an outbuilding behind the shelter.
Where's that going to go? Is that directly east or south?
So basically, like the toy garden lot will be halfway taken up by an outbuilding.
Oh, okay.
Behind the building, yeah.
How is that ever full?
The parking lot, yes, but we're more full of animals than we are full of
People, right.
Any other questions on that? I kind of visualize, well, one of the options we looked at is like those overflow classrooms they have at schools that can be
Sure, yeah.
put in the back of the property.
Portables.
Exactly. It's a
I'm
portable
very good at those.
That's every night. We are over capacity by about 20 animals a night. And if you add that up by the year, we need more space is really what it comes down to. So just like you guys said, a portable building where we can put overflow animals in until we can find them homes.
Maybe that's what we need to do with our jail. Portable.
So they're proposing to fund that out of their capital reserve fund.
Okay.
Okay, the shelter worker is a person in your neighborhood. Oh, a shelter worker cleans and feeds all the species and all the breeds. You may think they only deal with pee, but they help adopt your new family.
Now, that's the one where I have a little problem because it takes a lot of poetic license to rhyme family.
You can thank Tally. So,
Thank you.
Hey, now just to talk about the general fund side of the division, again, that same reduction in OPEB, and then the vehicles that are under the general fund side, reduction in the vehicle replacement fund contribution there. And then out of a donation fund for shelter overpopulation and awareness campaign, medical supplies and sterilization also out of the donation fund, and then restoration of 2 time-limited FTEs for the mobile unit. So this, the full cost of those FTEs was funded in a budget adjustment we did this year, but this 7,000 covers changes in the annual budget. So Public Works, any questions on animal services? They do.
Yes, thank you very much.
In Public Works operations, the line worker is a person in your neighborhood. If the power is out and the signals are flashing, our line workers respond to keep cars from crashing. With the skills to fix switches and relays, they keep traffic moving without further delays.
Nice.
We have a couple for these guys. The maintenance worker sweeps and cleans our street drains to keep the water flowing when it rains. So when the leaves start falling and winter is calling, our sweepers and vac trucks are there for the hauling. The plow driver clears your snow with big trucks. When complimented, they just say, "Aw shucks." They're up all night when it's cold, but to them it never gets old. So Public Works operations, again, 100% contract funded. You'll see in their budget changes, that same reduction to the OPEB contribution, a small reduction in their debt service on their building. And then their fleet capitalization savings is large this year. They have a lot of vehicles and really expensive vehicles. So that's a $2 million savings this year for them. Changes in revenue, their contract increases, and then that on the paving of the Midvale complex, that $162,000 of revenue is revenue coming from flood control, fleet, and Wasatch Front Waste and Recycling for those agencies to share in the repaving.
And that's that road that's going back, right?
Yeah, and some of the
It'll be area around it.
Yeah, it'll be done in phases. That road is first, then there'll be some of the auxiliary parking lots in a future phase.
Is the percent of who's paying that going to change now that?
Well, we sat down with all of those agencies to see what parts of the campus where are they using where do they park their trucks and vehicles? And,
Right.
and we shared that proportionately. So each one is sharing that proportionate to what they use.
Yeah, but we're adjusting some of that this next year, so that's why I was curious.
Oh, okay.
Well, Public Works Engineering, right?
Well, Public Works Engineering is not
It's
on
not
that
in this
campus.
area.
No,
Okay, there
they're
we go.
fully at the government center. So,
So
yeah,
they-
yeah.
okay.
Flood control
Then that won't
control
affect any
does
of
use
that.
some area there, like the sandbag shed.
I knew they did,
Yeah.
so I wasn't sure if you guys had stuff there or not.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
And then budget changes, payroll adjustments, fleet costs, and that's the cost that later in the presentation, we'll talk about the fleet rate changes. Facilities maintenance, after hours dispatch, and light and power. I think most of those are inflationary costs. So. The electrician is a person in your neighborhood. The electrical crew fixes the lights to make sure you can see at night. They also make sure that the traffic signals work and the traffic flowing smoothly is the added perk. Street maintenance crews fix the roads so the pavement won't crumble or erode. They also fix the big potholes so your tires will continue to roll. So other expenses in the Public Works operations budget, just an increase in rental of equipment, increase in cost of goods sold to our customers. We are reclassing and funding a vacant position it was a trustee crew coordinator, and we're reclassing it to an ATMS coordinator. ATMS stands for Automated Transportation Management System, and it's the coordinator that runs all the traffic signals in the valley. And they've got monitors up on their walls, and they can time all of those and try to keep the traffic flowing. The person in that position is on the verge of retirement, so we're trying to double fill that to kind of have succession planning.
What portion of the county do we cover in terms of light signals?
Every city except for Salt Lake City
what I thought.
on the non-UDOT roads.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
You said that earlier.
yeah, no problem. And then they've put money in from their fund balance, just paying for these others: the generator, fire system upgrade, an airless sprayer, and a roll-up door replacement. Any questions on Public Works operations? Okay, flood control engineering. A flood control engineer is here to stay. They keep the water safe at bay. They design the drains and levees strong so rivers stay where they belong, flow where they belong. So flood control, again, they're funded by the flood control tax levy. You see again their reduction in their OPEB charges and their fleet replacement charges. And then they have their new revenues, $70,000 for a watershed grant that they anticipate, and then property tax and motor vehicle fee projection change in revenue there. A civil engineer is a person in your neighborhood. Well, a civil engineer is a friend of mine. They make our bridges strong and roads align. They plan sidewalks and drainage too, making sure your streets are safe for you. So
I
again,
do want to point out that not all civil engineers make sure roads align.
I know. there's
Just saying. I know yours do.
we do our best. We are carrying over money still from the last year when we had the really high runoff. We're still doing some dredging, and one of the major dredging projects still left to do is the Sugar House detention pond. And this is the expenses. We showed there's $70,000 of revenue, and then this is a $70,000 expense associated with that grant. And then with the split off of Public Works Engineering going to the MSD, there are some functions that were partially covered by the MSD that we need to fund. We're asking for 2 FTEs in Public Works Engineering, one person to help manage we have the county side of the UPDES permit that manages all of the counties and does inspections and tracking and all that for county properties and buildings and things. And then we did lose 2 accountants with the Public Works Engineering, and we're replacing them with one lower level fiscal coordinator to help with our fiscal manager's workload and separation of duties. And then we're asking for an increase for loss of revenue from Public Works Engineering of $344,000. I will mention both of these increases are coming from our existing budget. We're able to cover those with existing revenues, and so we're not asking for new money, but we're asking to fund that. And then the $16,000 is Midvale's pavement plan to go toward that Midvale paving plan. That's flood control's share. Before I go on, I just did want to mention, so just as something to clarify, because there's a lot of confusion, flood control covers, if you say, well, what does flood control cover and what does a local municipality cover as far as drainage? And so flood control, I would describe them, they kind of run the backbone system, like the arterials, like the Jordan River and the major creeks and the canals. And so the cities are responsible for their storm drainage on the small storm drain lines until they get to a flood control facility, and then we take care of it from there. So that's kind of the difference. A watershed scientist is a person in your neighborhood. A watershed scientist plans the land. They study water, soil, and sand. They keep streams clean and forests green, protecting lakes and ponds unseen. So we do have, like I mentioned, a lot of carryover in our flood control budget. It includes a couple of large transformational initiative projects as well as multiple projects. And anybody that's built projects knows that most projects are multi-year. There's design, there's right-of-way acquisition, there's construction that can carry over. So those projects carry over, and so they have quite a long list of projects. In fact, this is their list of projects. They have some new projects, some money they're adding to existing projects that are being rebudgeted. And then there's the 19 million that we showed in the previous slide. Any questions?
Any questions?
Okay. We do have 2 divisions. Well, one division in Public Works and Municipal Services, and then Solid Waste are proposing some rate changes. So I'll let Lisa talk about the solid waste rate changes, but in fleet, we are increasing our hourly rates $3 an hour in all 3 shops. And it's just so you know, that's still well below market, but we felt like we needed to do that increase to try to keep up with market as best we can.
Okay.
fleet management. The welder is the person in your neighborhood. They join the metal pieces, making strong and tight with sparks and flames. They work both day and night with helmets and with gloves. They make things run. Repairing broken equipment is lots of fun. So in fleet, you see some budget reductions. You see the reduction in their OPEB and then a small reduction in their debt service. Because the ownership of the vehicles is in fleet, they don't have the reduction in their contribution to the vehicle replacement fund. It's in their balance sheet. But you can see in the revenues, you do see that almost $4.4 million of reduction in revenues. That is the recognizing the reduction in the contribution to the vehicle replacement fund by the agencies that fleet services. And then other revenue increases of $1.3 million for our rate changes.
Go ahead. I just had a question about the rate changes
Yeah.
on solid waste. Is that also below like market? Because I'm just wondering, why would we want to be greatly below market rate on something like waste management? I'm just curious.
On solid waste, so solid waste, and I don't know if Lisa's here, but their rates are based, they break their costs into cost centers. So some cost centers bring in more revenue than they cost, and others are subsidized by those. And so most of those rate changes are to try to get all of the cost centers up to their full cost of operation.
But it's an enterprise fund, right? So it would cover the costs. Is that correct?
As a fund itself, it covers its cost, but not necessarily each cost center covers its own cost. Does that make sense? So we lose money, let's say, in composting, but we make money in the tipping phase. And so the tipping phase offsets the loss in the compost. The rate changes, a lot of them are recognizing the fact that we treat the material differently. So the auto fluff and some of the other stuff is what we used to use for beneficial use. And so we charged it a lower rate because it was important to us to get. We no longer use it for beneficial use. And so now we're just charging it the tipping rate. So we take it to the tipping phase and we dispose of it now. And that's just recognizing that we do that.
Could I talk to them more?
Yeah.
When I get to my part, I can answer all
Yeah.
your questions.
Well,
I'll be, as soon as they finish.
So
Sorry, I didn't mean to get.
that's okay. No, that's fine. So I'll just, there's like one or two more poems, so we'll go through this. The auto mechanic is the person in your neighborhood. They fix all the cars so they run just right. They check your oil and tires to make sure they're tight. With wrenches and with tools, they work with pride to keep you safe and rolling on every ride. So diesel mechanic, they fix all the trucks so they run just right. From engines to exhaust, they work day and night. With wrenches and with grease, they get the job done, keeping diesel engines rolling one by one. And so with fleet, so they do have some market-based grade changes that HR recommended. They also, the software they use to track all of their vehicles and all of the maintenance is old, and they need to replace that software. And so they would like to cover that out of their fund balance, since that's a $300,000 cost. Their ASE certification for their mechanics, they have an incentive program they use to keep their mechanics certified. Also out of fund balance, they're replacing a generator, and then their contribution to the Midvale pavement plan is $75,000. Personnel annualizations, making adjustments to healthcare plans and things like that, is $13,000. Cost of goods sold, increase of $391,000. That's fuel and parts that we sell to our customers. And then there's an increase in depreciation to recognize the vehicles from the UPD vehicles. And then acquisition of vehicles, we're budgeting $12 million for acquisition of vehicles for our customers out of the vehicle replacement fund. Any questions on fleet before we go on?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
In terms of your fleet folks, I had worked with one of the folks in charge of the auto technician program at Weber State, and they have a really great program. They do some additional training for EV vehicles as well, and would just love to talk further and work further on if there's way to either improve that pipeline of some of these students coming to join us, because
So we are
cool school to job potential there. Someone in the back is
We actually appreciate you helping us to set that up.
yeah.
good.
Come to a microphone because some folks are online.
Scott
Councilmember?
Hadzik is,
Yes,
and
he-
he's now on our fleet board too.
Oh,
We've
good.
a- We've
Well-
asked him to be on our fleet board.
Please let me know how I can help be involved in this. It's something I'm really interested in, both as like a great job for our kids and also like solves a lot of challenges with communities that want to adopt more EV vehicles, but also just need more technicians, and there's a shortage in our state. So
There's a shortage everywhere. It's not just in our state. But yeah, that actually has just the beginnings of a productive relationship with Weber State. Like I said, I'm going to be fulfilling a position on their board, overlooking their program moving forward. We're going to have Scott on our board for the fleet board. And then we're starting to work on an apprenticeship program to be able to capitalize on using that relationship with Weber State. So, and I appreciate you bringing that up and kind of helping us to get introduced between the two of us.
well, let me know how I can support because I think it's a great career and there's a huge need. So thank you.
Yeah, we're excited they have a great program, so thank you.
Oh. I'm Ben Ruche. I'm the Associate Director of Fleet. I came from West Jordan City for 9 years as fleet manager there. I've been here now 1 whole year as of a couple days ago. And I actually am a Weber State graduate. So it's kind of fun for me because the program is currently being run by a couple of guys that were there when I was there, that were just starting with Weber State. So some familiar faces is kind of fun.
Council member, I just wanted to add, thank you for the connection because it was perfect timing for where we are in our program and some of our electric vehicles and going past the warranty period. And so we were looking at other options. So that was a great connection. So thank you for connecting us.
Well, thank
with
you. It's a
Scott
team
and the
sport, and please let me know how I can continue to help because I'm really interested in this area.
Great, thank you. So that, I'll turn the time over to Lisa now.
Actually, Patrick's.
Oh, Patrick's gonna.
Standing in for Lisa is Patrick, sorry.
Here's, I'll give you the clicker.
Okay, there we go. And first I want to apologize for, I'm not a poet, but I did have some help. So the landfill employee is a person in your neighborhood. The landfill employee accepts and buries trash to protect our environment from anything rash. We also protect the water and air because at the landfill, we really do care. What am I pointing?
It's the down arrow, but
Yeah.
it takes a second.
Down arrow. It usually works better if you point it at that one.
That one?
Okay.
And did you want to go back to the rates, Patrick, real quick?
I can't hear what, go to the rates. Okay, the
Yeah.
rates.
Press up.
The rates, we had a couple waste streams, waste coats, cover fluff and wood commercial, which historically were used beneficially, so we priced them lower. We do not use them beneficially anymore. So we have been, past several years, we have been incrementally increasing those to get them to the standard trash rate. So we've got one more year after 25 to do that on the fluff. And that's primarily tire fluff from the tire recyclers, okay? And then the wood commercial is just everything green waste that doesn't come in from curbside collected, which is Wasatch Front Waste in Salt Lake City that we do use in our composting process. So we are increasing the price of compost, $5 a yard, which we are still the low-cost provider for a non-premium compost in the county. And we have sold more with Transjordan shutting down their operations. And then the curbside green waste, we're increasing $3 per ton, which is Wasatch Front Waste in Salt Lake City, because we have continued to try to reduce the subsidy required to produce compost. Okay?
And then to answer your question, we are lower on our rates than most of the places in the valley. Yeah.
One of the reasons is because we don't have to haul our solid waste outside of the county. We have a landfill right here that has life left.
Transjordan has continued to raise their rates based on the fact that they're building a new transfer station, getting people ready to understand that when it does start to transfer in 9 years or so down to Bayview, the costs associated with that. So again, solid waste management, we are enterprise fund, fee funded, 25 expenses at 19,390,917. Our revenues at 2810. Our fund balance, those dollars are used for our restricted cash accounts, which future capital projects, equipment, and most notably, future self-construction. Okay? Some 2025 budget changes include similar ones to the other divisions with the OPEB reduction and the fleet capitalization reductions. Some of our other notable budget changes for revenue, again, the rate increase with those that we just discussed. We've had revenue adjustments up, which includes, we are selling more compost with Transjordan not doing it anymore. We're budgeting for some additional landfill tons, several waste streams that we haven't had confidence yet or previous to this that we would continue to see those, but now we do. So we're budgeting for those additional tonnages. We have the interest income has been good, and that's primarily what our our revenue adjustments are comprised of. We are going to have some additional money associated with mattress price. We have a new mattress recycling contract. That pretty much is just a flow-through thing, though. But with this new contract, previously we were at about 80% recycling of mattresses. Our new contract requires the new entity to recycle 100% of what they receive. So on the revenue side, on the expense side, oh, sorry, I got to read this next one there. The transfer station, let me read that because we took time to do it. Is the person in your neighborhood, the transfer station employee combines the waste into fewer loads to reduce the wear on our roads. We reduce the number of vehicles to the landfill line, which helps the customers save some time. It does. In essence, the transfer station turns about 200 to 250 loads a day into about 20 to the landfill. And if you know, we process about 1,300 transactions a day at the landfill. And if you've been there on a Saturday, you understand that sometimes there would be a wait in the line. Okay, from expense side, of course, we buy a lot of equipment every year. Compactors, loaders, roll-off trucks, articulated haul trucks, graders, etc. We've had expense adjustments this year, which include some additional expenses to keep our transfer station floor in good shape. We have more people using credit cards, and the credit card fees have went up. Again, we currently don't pass any of the credit card fees to the customers, which is something we may be looking at in the future. Equipment maintenance has went up a little bit. Our professional fees have went up some. Our contract hauling has a rate adjustment every year from the transfer station. And due to the additional tonnage, our Salt Lake County Health Department household hazardous waste fee has went up quite a bit also. Any questions?
Questions from council?
What percentage of the county do you serve? Is it Transjordan the only other
Well,
option?
that's hard to quantify because we know that all the waste does not stay in the county. We have the private haulers, well, publicly traded companies and private owned. Waste Management transfers waste out of the county. ACE transfers waste out of the county. Republic transfers waste out of the county. Our only captive waste is Salt Lake City, what they haul, and Wasatch Front waste. Other than that, it's whoever decides that we're the price
All right.
to bring it to us.
Salt Lake City and Wasatch, I can't remember how big Wasatch Front is.
They're our largest single customer. Okay, and they primarily take it to the transfer station.
And they provide services for what portion of the county?
Yeah, they have about 85,000 homes, roughly. Yeah, I don't know the quantity of that, but yeah, they're our largest customer, and the largest provider to the landfill is the transfer station. Yep. All right. Well, thank you.
Wasatch Front.
The reason I was asking those questions, I don't know very much.
Jim, you might want to pull your microphone closer.
Mitch, maybe you could start off. What is the threshold to be defined as a regional service that we may provide? What goes into saying, okay, this is a regional service or it's not?
Well, there are, I think the easier way, from a legal perspective, there are listed municipal services. So that's sort of the first test, is you go through the statute and identify things that are described as municipal and defined as municipal services. And then services that are not that category may be regional services, but clearly they have to have a nexus that goes beyond just one particular municipality. So oftentimes policy issues, programs that extend across municipal boundaries. Of course, items that are specifically designated to Salt Lake County or its elected officials by statute to do can be considered regional services or county-wide services. And a lot of the analysis focuses on tax purposes. So the notion is that at the county, we should not compete with municipalities who are providing a municipal service and taxing their residents for that service, or failing to provide our county-wide services on less than an even-handed or equal opportunity basis.
Well, the reason I asked, because as you look at these, several of maybe half of the public works organizations are probably regional in nature, and they all have their own funding sources, whether it be a tax or a contract. And how much time and money do you spend on negotiating contracts, collecting money for each of these different organizations? And
Right. Well, our directors do a lot of contract negotiation, but the city budgets go from July to June every year.
Right.
Some of our contracts, though, are multi-year contracts, and so we negotiate those once every 3 years or once every 5 years. But then the inside of the contracts, it'll give us some leeway to increase our rates, for example, based on the CPI or other
Right.
factors. So.
okay. I don't think my idea would work, so go
Okay.
on.
Okay. I think that's all we have. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for them? All right. Thank you.
Madam Chair, we need a motion.
We do need a motion.
I move we adopt the public works budget as proposed by the mayor.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
So I'm going to tee up the clerk's budget for 2025. The request made by the clerk was for an annualization of their health insurance costs based on a selection process that occurred this year. That represents about a $46,000 increase. That was recommended and is included in the mayor's proposed budget. The clerk also asked to start setting money aside to recognize that their election equipment needs to be replaced eventually. And while we all agreed that this was a really good idea, the $250,000 requested was not recommended in the mayor's proposed budget. But collectively, we all agree that this is something we want to look at, and there may be a reimbursement from the state for the general election that would allow us to start that discussion earlier than next year.
okay. All right, we need to move on that one.
Yes, I need to vote on that too.
Okay.
Madam Chair, if I may, Dave, do you have a timeline of when we might know if there's money available from this state?
Well, it won't be
or-
this year, so we will recognize it when we receive it, and it'll probably be after January.
Okay.
Okay. So I would entertain a motion if the council is ready to make a decision on this one.
Well, and help me out if I am making a motion that doesn't work for everyone, but I move that we approve the clerk's budget as proposed by the mayor with the caveat that we actively seek additional funding for election equipment as is made available.
Second that.
There's motion and second. And since this is going to be a heavy year, as stated today by our speaker, in election reform. Who knows what that's going to look like in 6 months? So,
Or what kind of equipment may be necessary, correct?
I have a motion, a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that passes.
That's all I've got.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Sorry, Dave, did you mean to skip over emergency management?
Yeah, we still have to do emergency management.
I didn't. I'm sorry.
No worries.
I
I was just going
I
to say that's our
apologize.
next one.
Catherine, it's on you then.
I was going to bring you back around if that was, I figured this one was going to be quick, so then we're going to go back.
This will hopefully be quick too. All right, so I have here with me Jared Steffi, fiscal agent. We also have Michael Ye, who is our internal emergency management program manager. Yes, something like that. And then I also have Tara Bahunin on the line as well. She is our emergency management director. Tara is under the weather today, has a horrible, terrible cough. So she blessed us all by not coming in today, but she's here online to help us get through this. All right, and so I'm just going to kick things off, and then I'll turn things over to Michael and or Tara when it makes sense. So, firstly, there we go. All right, we always like to do just a snapshot of the department, just to refresh everybody's recollection of what sort of work that we do. So the first line, this is Michael's shop, the internal emergency management admin. You'll see it's a shop of one, which is Michael. And just so y'all know, I don't know if you've heard this, but Michael is retiring from the county at the end of this year.
Oh, wow.
Very, very sad to see him go. He's been a tremendous asset. I can't tell you how many times in the halls or somewhere I get compliments on Michael's program and all the great work that he's done for the county since he's gotten here. So Michael, you will be missed, but God bless. Okay, so then we also, moving on, have the UFA emergency management contract, which is Tara's shop. She has, there's 12 FTEs in that shop, all UFA employees. We then have the rec area canyon contribution. We will not be exploring that further today unless y'all want to. We had set up this PowerPoint before we knew that that piece was going to get carved out and dealt with this morning. And then lastly, we have a wildland fire contract that we'll talk about. So real quick, it's very kind of easy budget this year. We have no new FTEs, no new general requests. We do have a general fund neutral request that Michael will touch upon, and a radio request that Tara will, if she can talk. If not, I will. And then we have a couple items that actually are going to benefit the general fund. The first is, you may recall that last year we took money from the emergency management fund balance, $150,000, to offset a portion of this UFA EM contract in order to benefit the general fund in the interest of trying to help the general fund through a difficult year. And last year we committed to doing that a second year. So this is the second year of that 2-year commitment, to the extent you all obviously approve it. Then also, I think you've already heard that we are recommending transferring the avalanche program contract to track, another way to help the general fund. And then we've already talked about the rec area contribution. Okay, so with that, with Michael, will you just touch upon the pretty much just one item on your budget this year?
Which is the BRIC grant.
Yes, sir.
So it's basically a pass-through. So Jordan School District didn't have a mitigation plan, so they needed to go through our process. So we're basically just the pass-through. So it's a 2-year project, so we paid half of it this year, right, Jared?
No, the total grant was like 315. We haven't paid that much. It's only been like $16,000.
Yeah. But they're supposed to complete it in 2025, right?
Yeah, so Jordan School District will run on a fiscal year that goes from July to June. And so they'll spend most of their money before June of 2025.
So again, general fund neutral, just need to recognize it. Any questions on internal emergency management?
Questions? Okay, hearing none, I entertain a motion.
Oh, wait, hold on.
Oh,
Sorry.
sorry.
We got to go through the rest of it. Sorry, that was just.
I thought
Michael
we were
shot.
ready.
Nope,
All right,
sorry.
let's keep going.
Okay, so now we're moving on to the EM contract with UFA. No new asks here. We do want to though bring your attention to drawdowns from the fund balance that I mentioned earlier. We now every year now, if we're ever going to draw down from this fund balance, we now come and mention it to you at a budget proceeding so that you all are aware of it and are in support of it. The first one is, and just so you know, the EM fund balance has been used in the past for a number of different reasons, including things like one-time purchases that that the organization needs. That's actually consistent with UFA does that in their budget. They use their fund balance for one-time purchases and other needs, and so this is consistent with that practice. In the past, we've also used it for example, to match grant funds because this program is also supported through grant money. But in any event, this year we are recommending a $64,000 reduction from the fund balance in order to purchase this or invest in this radio upgrade. Essentially, it's our existing handheld radios need to be upgraded to something called P25 compliant. You may have heard that. It's kind of a buzzword right now. It's an initiative that's a statewide initiative that essentially all emergency management agencies across the state are being required to upgrade their radios to this P25 compliance standard in order to ensure compatibility and making sure that we avoid disruptions and various other things. So we need to do it, and we've got money in our fund balance to cover it.
What's the airway range they're using for that? Do you know?
Ooh, that's a stumper. Tara, do you know? Or Ben, is Ben still here? Remember Ben, who was up here? Our new fleet associate director, he has expertise in this area. I can't answer that question, but we can get back to you on it.
Curious. Okay, thank you.
Man, you stumped me. No worries. Okay, and then I already talked about the general fund reduction for the 150. Excuse me, our general fund reduction in order to help excuse me, that might be a typo. That should be fund balance reduction in order to benefit the general fund. Sorry. Okay, and then lastly, we talked about avalanches moving to tracks. We don't need to talk about that. Then we also are just now renewing the wildland fire appropriation. As you know, we do this every year. It's essentially a way that we purchase, I'll call it insurance, to have the state come in when a fire gets to the point where we need additional help in managing it. We've done this before. There's no change in this budget amount this year. And that's it, because we already talked about contribution. Okay.
Okay.
Now we're done.
Now, do you have questions? And if not, I entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I move approval of the Emergency Management Department's budget as proposed by Mayor Wilson.
Second.
I have a motion and second. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That carries.
Thank you all.
All right. Well, yeah, we're going to do that. There was one other item, but the council member is not here, so I'm not going to worry about that right now. So let's go ahead and look at consent then. Would you like to do consent?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I move approval of items 7.1 through 11.1, which includes approval of the October 29th council meeting minutes.
Okay. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so that carries. All right. Now we have a quorum. I know. They're slowly dying off. I don't know what's going on here.
It's the 9 a.m. start time.
Oh, maybe. So we will actually, we just continue to Board of Canvassers, or do we adjourn to Board of Canvassers?
If there's no other business in this meeting, you can adjourn the council meeting and then the Board of
It's
Canvassers will
a
convene at 4.
separate meeting,
Yeah.
right? Okay. Yep. All right, well, is there any other business before the council right now?
Isn't anything else we can do off the list or anything until next week?
Yeah,
Well, it
really
depends how
doesn't.
ambitious you want to get with these 5 people.
Hey, you know what? We could actually solve the entire thing
go.
right now and be
Dave,
done.
do you got the list?
Pull up that list. Let's go over some things. I think we can solve some issues really quick.
You snooze, you lose.
This isn't an issue for today, but you might remember a couple of weeks ago, I brought up the fact that the livestock auction.
Oh, yeah.
showed up-
Let's solve that today.
Showed up short.
We've got the
of about
votes today. Let's do it.
14 grand or 1,400. Oh, David is here. Okay. Clear the air, David. I didn't know you were here.
I thought I left too. So we're talking about your rendering?
Right.
Yes.
So the issue on the table is whether or not you can come up with an additional $1,400.
It was about 14. wasn't
Yeah.
it? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and that's it. Either you're going to make me get a second job and pay for it, or you can help me out.
I think we had some people willing to donate some of their budgets to that. And then I also think that I don't know how much you have. but
I
don't have
also don't know how much I have. We're talking this year, not
This year.
25.
That's correct.
Yeah. I mean, whatever I have, I'm happy to contribute
I-
that.
I think the council budget can cover this.
Yeah, well, I think-
We have a little bit left over this year. We could probably put towards it, don't you think?
I will certainly try. If you
If we're
will
tight
authorize it, I will.
right now?
Yes.
The mayor's office might be able to
Can
contribute.
he accept private donations?
I think this is a situation where it was a contribution. I would like to keep it a contribution from the county. So if you
no,
will
I agree.
authorize it, we will try to pay for this out of the council's budget.
Yeah, I think we ought to authorize it, personally. Matter of fact, I'll make the motion to authorize it. Do I have a
I
second?
appreciate that.
I will second that.
There you go.
Thank you, too.
Authorize and second. There you go. All in favor to do that, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We'll find the money to pay for that.
That's out of our,
to get another job.
it's out of our hair and into David's.
Dave,
Thank you,
I will
David.
be happy to donate 500 from mine.
I appreciate it.
What's that?
Thank you.
I don't know how much I have left.
I think we're going to be just fine, but if there's a problem, I'll let you know
That's awesome.
by next week.
Okay, sweet.
Okay?
We'll figure it out.
Okay.
And then do we need to look at upping that for next time then?
Pardon me?
Do we need to up that amount for next time then?
No, we just have to be careful how much we bid on animals.
There you go.
Yeah, but it's always, the more the better, because
Yeah.
it all goes to the food bank, so.
Understood.
If that could be an increased contribution.
Well, and I think part of it, we didn't know what the rendering fees were, and we were going off a number that had been given to us, and then it ended up being higher than what we thought.
Right.
So Chris does a great job of saying, this is how much we have, we can't go
No, he
over
did.
that amount.
He did, and but based upon past performance, he was right.
We thought we were right on, but,
Yeah.
so.
Anyway, thank you, everyone. Is that ought to be free now?
Well, I came back up because I heard there was a discussion, or so there was a contemplation that we would revisit the list now. Is that on the table or not?
Yeah, it's on the table. We can look at the list now. Let's do it. Let's get a little work done.
We have a quorum.
That's right.
Let's get it done.
And we're gonna,
Just because you're the only man, you're just gonna have to man up.
Okay, so, I mean, we can certainly talk about what you want to do to add, and then we can come back next
Absolutely.
week and talk about how you want to fund those additions. Is that where we are?
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, in terms of the highest priority, it's
I've got some of
it's
the
pay.
ones here.
Do you want to,
Yeah, why don't you ask your question first? Let's start
Okay.
with Councilmember Suzanne Harrison's
All right.
question first.
so I sent an email, Mitch, to you this morning, so probably haven't had a chance to look at it. My question is, with the various HR projects looking at what does the market pay versus what do we pay for different jobs, I was interested in public safety, sworn officers, and perhaps corrections seem at the lower end of the market based on the charts that the sheriff showed us. But the sheriff also said that you can't increase the pay for just certain sworn officers. And I don't understand, is that a statutory issue or a county policy issue? How does,
So-
can you help me understand that?
Yes, I looked into that after our last meeting.
Thank you.
And it is there is a specific set of HR policies that have been adopted for sworn personnel. So under
Just
statute,
our HR.
Yes.
County.
Correct. County HR for the sheriff has a separate, it's by statute, the sheriff has a special committee that reviews and makes HR recommendations. It is ultimately a matter of countywide policy, but it's specifically for HR. And those pay practices that are in the adopted policy contemplate a similar distribution of salaries for people in the same grade.
So if possible, Councilwoman Stringham and I would like to get together with you to see what tweaks might be needed and also maybe loop in HR to see if there's some other unintended ramifications of that. Because from what I'm hearing, the public safety folks are well below what perhaps market rate
And there's
is.
some that are more than others.
Yeah, we
And
just
that's a
want to
concern.
dig into that maybe with you and Sharon or whoever the appropriate person is from the sheriff's office too.
Sure, and I will be sure to reach out with, Bridget and the colleagues in the district attorney's office who make, help advise on HR policy, because I am admittedly a bit out of my depth on the sworn officer compensation system.
So are we. So
We will
thank
be
you.
working with you all.
And we have individuals who can answer those questions.
Yes, we really appreciate that too.
Well, I'll just add to that. I think the other part of that discussion is the kind of work that an individual is doing. So there's a base pay, and then there can be an acknowledgement, for example, that if a bailiff is in a situation where he or she is, and those are high stress jobs in a lot of cases, that could be an adjustment for the job as opposed to the person. And so just like you were talking about providing additional supplement, hourly supplement for the trainers, you could also do that, as well as recognize, for example, someone on the midnight shift at the jail, because there's fewer staff and greater opportunities
I
to.
think one of the things we really need to call out on this one that became very apparent in our discussion last week was that there's different certifications that we require for some of our jobs that are not required for others in the same position in other entities. So we have different levels of certification. So we have people who are more certified. And so we need to make sure our pay is commensurate with the different certifications that they have. So maybe certifications have an amount attached to them. If you are certified, then you get this increase of pay and those type of things, so that we're using, if those skills are being used, that they're getting compensated for those skills that they've learned.
So that's true. We do have, the county is almost one of the only employers of law enforcement that uses the special function officer category.
Yes.
Our PSB bureau is almost entirely SFOs. And then we have different levels. We have an LEO, category 1, category 2. So we have different, and then the corrections officers.
Right.
So we do have different levels of certification. Now, the one thing you want to be careful of is there are individuals who could be LEO certified, and they're keeping that certification because they've earned it and they've been given that by Utah's Post. However, they might not be employed by the county in a position that requires them to use that higher level of certification. So you're going to want to be careful not simply to tie it to the certification of the individual.
No, you would tie it to the certification required for the position. And that's really what it is. So the position, if it requires a certification, it would have the amount attached to it that would go with it, right? And you might have the same position in a team where only one person needs to be certified and have a special certification, not everybody else does. So then that particular one is tied with an additional amount to it, so.
And that's the nuance that Sharon and her folks, as well as the Merit Service Commission that actually reviews, that's what Dave was talking about, that reviews the sworn positions, their categories, and their salary recommendations would look at.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. All right, so let's look at that policy and see what we need to tweak and do to be able to, to work through that, so.
So we were presented with a 3%, 4%, and 5%.
Yes,
And
we
we
were.
still haven't made a decision on that.
No.
So.
And I think for
we
me.
can adjust some funding in there.
Yes. I think, and part of our concern is if you move them all at the same, you still have the people who are not where they should be. You still have the people who are probably over where they should be, because that's what you have in every organization, right? When you do a market study, there are some who are always below and there's some that are always above, but usually it kind of filters out over time. Those who are above, that market bounces a little bit, right? And so they'll come in within range and you're fine. But those who are below never make it up if you don't somehow get them into where they need to be in that pay range. And that is our concern. That was what we were discussing.
Which was a
last week.
large part of us asking for the salary survey to begin with.
But they don't actually fall under that same thing. They're doing their own thing, which is why I asked the question, what is the salary survey on those specific things and where do we need to bring, and who is it that we need to bring up? And they said, no, under our policy, which is correct, we have to do the same across the board. And I'm saying, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to bring those who are lower end up so that we're bringing specific ones up.
But the policy can be changed.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about doing. Okay, go ahead.
I just wanted, it dawned on me when we were discussing this, or you were discussing it last week or whenever, that when it said 3%, 4%, and 5%, it's actually what that meant to say is a total comp of 5.75, 6.75, 7.575. Because the mayor's budget is at 2 in the structure plus 2.75. So we proposed 4.75.
Right.
And those were the scenarios to bump them 1%, 2%, or 3% on the structure portion only.
Combined with what?
Yes. So it gets complicated. I just wanted to make sure that everybody was on this same
And
same
aware
base.
of that, yeah.
Okay.
So just to, you look confused. So the idea is there's a career adjustment on an anniversary date for someone who's not at the top of their grade. And that's a 2.75% per year step increase based on years of service.
Right. I guess my question is the graph and chart that the sheriff had in her presentation had a 2, 3, and 5. Are you saying that those numbers are in addition to what the mayor has proposed, or are those just separate?
That was only part of what the
Okay.
mayor proposed.
So if you chose the 3, it would add an extra 1%.
All right. Well, we'll.
Chose the 4, so what the mayor proposed, 2% structure plus 2.75%.
Okay. Now that part I knew.
And theirs were just the incremental increase.
They were only doing
3% structure, 4% structure.
Okay.
or 5%
Okay. I gotcha.
But that's on top of the 2.75% step.
Right. Yes, Mitch.
Just going back to something, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to, so the Peace Officer Merit Commission, I want to make sure I had the correct name of the organization. I've pulled up their policies, and they do have a relevant policy on policy changes, which provides the following in substantial format. The Merit Commission may repeal and amend existing policies and procedures or adopt new policies and procedures in a public meeting. This includes the sheriff, peace officers, employee organizations shall be given a reasonable period of time to review and respond to proposed changes. And then there's a whole process for various individuals and groups who are entitled to notification of changes, and a process that involves approval in a public meeting. That would suggest to me at a minimum, if this body is interested in changing the compensation philosophy or system, we are going to need to work through these folks, and they have a pretty formal process for making changes that seems to involve a lot of stakeholders. That may not be the entire picture. I know there's a whole state statute about this as well, but I just wanted to provide that information to you, that it is unlikely to be harmonious with an approach that we want to change compensation philosophy just as part of the budget next week. I'm not saying it cannot be done, but it would probably be quite a formal procedural process in order to have that be considered.
But if we have a compensation concept of that we'd like to see and work towards, we could set that up with a concept and then work through it for the first half of the next year, correct?
I think that you could express definitely legislative intent that you'd like to look forward to that. I would hesitate recommending to you that you budget salaries based on a change in compensation philosophy until we understand whether or not it can be lawfully implemented by the organizations that are responsible for making policy changes.
Well, they're responsible for policies changes, but they're not responsible for setting our pay rates, correct?
Well, yes and no. So the actual amount, like, that is up to you to approve the pay plan in the budget. But if one of the policies says that individuals will receive in a similar classification grade, similar payment, that does seem to be a policy issue that would come into conflict if the council were then directing salaries to be provided in a different way. Does that make sense?
Sort of. So what I'm hearing is they have a different pay scale and pay setup than the rest of the county, which we knew. But, and there's a whole bunch of things that actually guide that. So we need to go through those to make sure what we're doing isn't out of
Correct.
alignment with what they do and we can do it. And if we can't do it, then we need to know why.
That's exactly
So,
right.
Okay.
Well, and with all the work we're doing with Epic and all the work
Yes.
that has gone to it, now is the time to combine it into one big package.
Yeah, state statute though may not allow us to do that. So let's see what we can do between the two.
We,
I
we
think
will
need
want to work with the Merit Commission on this issue.
Absolutely. And I think you know what? Let's dig in. Let's do another big project, you know? If we need to, let's do it.
Or complete the big project we've started.
I know. And you're coming back next year.
So in terms of the 3, the 4, and the 5, I think the important thing is the delta. So the 1 percentage point difference, so if you increase the structural adjustment from 2% to 3%, it adds, according to the numbers provided by the sheriff's staff, $726,000. And that's an ongoing cost, obviously, because it's in the base pay.
Okay. I am less apt to raise everybody across the board. I'm more apt to take the mayor's suggested at this point. But I would like to look at those who are on the lower end specifically and see if there's a way to fix those things. So I think that's what, and you know, and I'd be happy to make that motion that we approve the mayor's budget on that and that we look at those who we deem through HR to be under industry and bring them up to where they need to be, if possible.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion on that? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That passes. Okay.
So I'm looking at the list now up there. So
Okay.
do you want to address the assessor's office contra account of about 35,000 and try to deal with that today?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's, I mean, just to review the bidding, I mean, the idea is that the assessor is willing and able to come up with a reduction in his expenses of about $35,000 because he can determine when to hire people and at what salary level. And that he is able, because of those flexibilities, to achieve $35,000. If, on the other hand, you're basically saying, well, we don't want there to be a contra account, then in order to achieve savings, you have to reduce an FTE. And that provides much less flexibility to the assessor because now he's constrained in terms of how many people he can hire, and he has less flexibility to realize underexpend.
Wasn't he one of the offices that had a pre-existing contra?
Yes,
holdover?
this is the pre-existing contra holdover. And here's the thing.
So this is from the last contra go-round, not
Yes.
the most recent.
It is, it's from I think it was confirmed that this was from the COVID.
Yes, this is the COVID cut. And this is my thing. If we gave everybody else back their COVID cut, but not him, where does that make sense? They're fully funded at this point. It doesn't make sense.
That's not the case.
And that is not the case. Okay, that's
No,
why I'm
there's-
asking.
There's plenty of, my office took a COVID cut, and I don't mean to disparage anybody on this, but there were a handful of offices that said, we can live without it. Mine was one. The assessor
his is
was
one.
the other.
Yeah, he is the other.
So it happened to be still in his budget, but it was because we gave a last call and said, hey, if you want to request your COVID, now's the time, request it back.
And they didn't.
many of the organizations did. He did not.
Yeah.
I did not. There were a handful of others that did not, and I put them on the board and said, thank you for the participation. These organizations, they decided to go without the restoration.
But at his presentation this time, he did ask for it back.
No, he did
Well,
not.
he did not.
He did
what
not.
He, what he
I
said,
brought it up.
What he said essentially was that he needs to have some underexpend to satisfy career growth for his employees, and that the way he would fund that would be to keep positions open for longer periods of time. And he said that in conjunction with that effort, he would be able to realize an additional $35,000 worth of savings. And he also emphasized that he's a team player and he knows this is a tough budget and he was willing to do. And so what we're doing essentially is forcing a precedent on him that doesn't set well with me because we're basically in a very tight budget year and we have an elected official who says, I can live with this cut. For goodness sakes, let's just say thank you.
Yeah. And just so you know, it was my misunderstanding of what that was, the reason why I brought it up, because I thought we had just given everybody back for the most part,
that's what I
those
thought.
things.
That's
And
that's exactly.
so that's why I was willing to say,
So
well, let's
he
just
is
give it back to him
He
and be
is willing
done
to not have that reinstated.
and just leave it as is. And I'm good with that since I'm the one that put it on the list. I'm good with just leaving it as is. But that was one of the reasons why it was there and brought forward because I brought it forward.
Okay, so then
So
we
given
can,
all that, I move that we strike this from the consideration because with Darren's explanation, your explanation, I think from what I'm hearing from Ann and Lori and the assessor is good with it. We don't need to
Yeah.
do anything with this, just strike it.
Yeah, and he actually sent me a really
So
nice
that's my
letter
motion.
after that discussion saying, no, I'm actually good with it. You can leave it.
Okay.
So that was my motion.
Yeah, I'll second that. So I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Hi, this is
That
Amy,
passes.
Madam Chair, and I'm on.
Oh, hello. Welcome.
and so since we're on that savings kick, I mean, there was about $227,000 of unexpended funds that were TI funded that related to the projects at Oxbow. And we talked about these when we did Fund 450. And it was identified that that money, was no longer needed. And because it was TI money, it could go back to the general fund. So on the plus side, I'm asking the council to recognize that 227,000 and how much was it? As a additional reserve in the general fund. And so what we're saying is these projects have closed out. There was underexpend from these projects that were TI funded. Those monies go back to the general fund. And if you motion that, then it will be different, obviously, than the mayor's recommended because it wasn't recognized at the time.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
I am too, and I'll make that motion.
Okay.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second. All right, motion and a second. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 We may be able to get rid
Any
of the whole
opposed?
Let's go.
Yeah.
All right.
Can you slide down a little bit on that list?
Here we go.
Okay. So
It's separate.
there was a discussion on, I'm going back to the 450 fund again. So when we did the 450 fund, it was the presumption that we were going to get the bond passed and there was going to be money to address capital projects, both at the jail and if necessary at Oxbow. We didn't get the bond, but we certainly have a need for those projects to be funded. The list that you approved originally did not include any projects at the jail or Oxbow. And given the uncertainties where we are, we can leave the $11 million in the 450 fund, but basically review the bidding on what the priority is and who gets funded first. That's not going to happen, anytime soon, but it can start next month, as long as you're comfortable basically saying we have $11 million in 450 to allocate to capital projects, and the council will determine the priority for those projects at a subsequent date.
Dave, I'll be honest, with the fact that the bond didn't pass and where we're at right now and the number of projects we do have coming up, I think we need to relook at the TI and what the TI is being spent on. I'd like to bring the entire list back for next week and look at that and look at the things that need to be funded with Oxbow, because we pulled those all out and lay those all out together right now and have a vote on each one of those things as we look at the whole list together, because I just don't see that. We've got a problem now funding things, so.
I don't think that necessarily precludes you rescinding the priority list that you've adopted. But I mean, that's what I'm looking for, is to start fresh without any preconceived idea of what that money is going to be allocated to.
Okay.
Is this the thing that was sent out with that? When you asked to reprioritize things? This was the facility?
It was Fund 450, yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense. And in conjunction, I think we need to have, we had talked about this last week, maybe some sort of working group with folks from the mayor's office, the sheriff's office, to kind of talk about what could be next steps. And I agree that with what you're recommending in terms of this 11 million as just like, let's push pause and make sure we're all on the same page of what next steps could be.
So that goes beyond the budget timeframe. So this is the suggestion that you made that we rescind.
That we just start fresh with no priority list. Yes, that's correct.
So I will make the motion that we rescind and reprioritize
Aye.
405 funding.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second on 450 funding. We almost, on 450 funding, that we rescind the list and we reevaluate and reprioritize. All in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that passes.
So the one, I guess, the low-hanging fruit from my perspective with regard to the TI funding is there are some projects that have promised TI funding in 2026. I think it's not inappropriate to basically say, no, those projects may be funded, but they will be funded with general fund dollars, not with TI dollars. There is no commitment on the part of the council to fund any project in 2026, and the TI designation for those projects is therefore eliminated, and the funding that was scheduled for 2026 is gone. And there's three projects that come to mind. There's the co-op project, there's the pre-apprenticeship program, and there's the half year left on the mobile animal services project.
And we can choose to fund those just straight from general fund.
Yes.
We choose to do that.
Chair,
Yes.
these particular programs, I think, need more than just a quick analysis, and we had thought next week. So if the council would be flexible to keep next week's date on these, I think would be better prepared.
We're happy to do that. I don't have a problem doing that. We just thought we'd kind of tick through the list and give a little
No,
bit.
I can see there's some that don't need a lot of presentation, a lot of consideration, but I myself want to be there because there's a couple that I really want to give some context to.
That's fair.
Aren't we asking to remove 2026 funding, not 2025?
That would be, but I mean,
Basically what
it
we're-
doesn't have to be.
2026 was up anyway in TI.
There are those three projects that have money in 2026. And all I'm saying is that it seems to me that the decision for that year can be made as though those monies were back in the general fund. They no longer need the TI designation.
Right.
And so I'm not arguing for or against the 2025 funding. I'm simply saying that the 2026 funding, if the council decides to fund it, should be general fund dollars, not TI dollars. But I mean,
Yeah. With that, I would make a motion that we push pause on this decision and put it on the 26th, maybe allow a little chunk of time for someone from the mayor's office to talk about it. And I think we have a lot of missing council members. I think it would benefit all of us to have a little time to dig into this in the week.
I would
ahead.
sincerely appreciate
Yeah.
that.
We actually don't
Dina
have-
is
so
trying
that's
to
time to do
rush
that.
down here right now.
No.
But
Yeah.
So
that would be best.
If we
Thank
don't
you.
need a motion,
We
then
don't need a motion.
but
We will just do that. So that's not a problem.
Thank
my
you
wish.
for that accommodation.
Yeah, I appreciate that, council. Thank you.
Okay. And if you can scroll down a little bit. Thank you.
so
Dave, can you just clarify on animal services?
my understanding is that it was a 2-year project that started halfway through and that the TI monies were continued for a half a year in 2026.
This is a separate one, but this is the money that we already invested in the mobile unit.
Yeah, we're aware.
So it's a 2-year pilot program. So we've basically invested in it and then not done the pilot program, which I think is absolutely necessary to
That's
determine if it's a long-term or not. So I would argue that you may be saving dollars, but we put quite a bit investment in it. And it feels like we should have the full 2 years of data to come back to the council at a later.
Well, I don't think, we're not talking about cutting the funding specifically for it. We're just saying it's now, basically, it's a difference of opinion now on whether there's really TI dollars or are we dealing with general fund money? And
I'm
we're
just
saying it's general fund
I
money.
don't think we're going to have enough data to come back and actually ask for a long-term general fund.
Yeah, part of what I've asked Dina to do is come back and show us what you agreed to in terms of pilot projects. I'm not saying there would never be an instance we wouldn't just bag a pilot project. We may, but last year we created some multi-year programs because they really are meant to execute, evaluate data, and then perhaps retool with general fund dollars. I don't recall the time frame for each and also just sort of what it took to execute out. So I'm not necessarily against suspending the status into 2026.
Right.
But I think we'll have a heck of a lot more information on that choice next year. So I just wanted next week for there to be like sort of a real look back on what was agreed to. So the council has that information as to whether or not they want to see through the entire intended window of these pilots, or, for whatever reason we decide or you decide to.
And Mayor, I was just trying to be clear specifically so that we understood what the council's intent was. It isn't to cut those programs or anything at this time. In this discussion right now, the intent is to discuss that TI money really doesn't exist. We're looking at, we have been looking at it all the time along as general fund monies. We feel like that's kind of how it needs to be treated going forward. And so that was the kind of the discussion we're having now.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
So the other area that's not listed is all of the FTEs and the treatment in particular of the FTEs associated with time-limited positions, as well as the funding that was provided and the merit status for the jail reentry program.
Right.
And I mean, again, that's a fairly complicated.
We'll save that one for next week because we want people to be prepared to come in.
Then I don't have anything else.
Madam Chairman, can I ask a question?
Yes, go
about
ahead.
FTEs? Do we have two categories, FTEs that are new requests versus FTEs that are extension of time limited? Or is it all one category?
We have both types.
So we have two different types to look at. Can we look at them in a group of, these are new requests and these are requests for extension of currently time limited?
Yes.
Okay.
Awesome.
Okay.
Okay. Any other business right now?
So let me just clarify.
Go
So
ahead.
in the case of the jail reentry program, the mayor recommended funding for those positions, but 12 were requested and she reduced that to 8. And then of those 8, 7, they're all time limited currently. They would like 7 of the 8 to be merit and 1 to remain time limited. And the one that would remain time limited would be the manager, if you will. And as I understand it, based on memory, the notion is that this is not a reduction necessarily in county employees because some of those positions were filled by the LDA. And the position to lead, the time-limited position as proposed by the mayor's budget, would be an open competition among everyone. And I just wanted to make it, the difference is that program did get a haircut. The co-op program, the pre-apprenticeship program, the animal services program, and I understand it's a pilot. They did not. They were funded at the current level.
One more question. Are all of these FTE requests, new and current, inhabited? We need to know if there are already people in that position or if it is a request for a new position that is not currently filled. That would,
Well,
I think that
if
would
it's a new position, obviously it wouldn't be filled. If it were a continuation of an existing position, that's a dynamic situation. In some case,
Yeah.
we will bring that information next week
Okay.
so that it's current.
Okay.
And just so you know, Councilwoman, I could have Darren be more specific, or we can next week, but the direction I gave, as we presented this budget to you, was that any entity that has unfilled positions, we would capture those time limited, we would pull those back. And the entity would lose those, and we would only bring forward time limited positions that have people actually working. There could be 1 or 2 one-offs, which is why I would defer to Darren's memory. or, you know, some work that Darren and Dave can do to prepare for next week.
Okay, thank you.
That's accurate. So I'll give you a quick example. So for example, in the district attorney's office, they had numerous time-limited positions that were vacant and eliminated,
I
not
think
requested.
we either started with 11 and are eliminating 7, or we're eliminating
Yeah,
11.
quite a
We
few.
have 4 filled that we're asking.
But there were 4 that were filled with 5 people, actually.
Yes.
And it was that specific set, and it wasn't necessarily
That's
because it was
unique.
the highest priority of the district attorney's office. It was because they were filled with people, and the mayor wanted to keep those people going for another year and not have to do a layoff.
Is one of those a job share?
So we have one position that we have 2 part-time paralegals that work the same position. It's very unusual that we have part-time employees, but we do have 2 very good employees who both wanted to go part-time, and we had the opportunity to split this position, and it works out beautifully. So if we can keep it, we would love it.
No.
And I'm happy to speak to our other item on the list if anyone wants to get there.
Okay, which one is that one?
The court interpreter costs,
Oh, there you go.
expert witness.
Just a reminder, there was an e-prosecutor addition made by the council.
Yes.
So that's already above and beyond what the mayor proposed.
Right.
Okay.
Where?
So just if you have any questions, this is something that we have paid using some of the ARPA TI money that we've had. So it generally would be a general fund expense. We've previously been paying for it with TI money, and with that going away, we asked for it in our budget presentation. It was not recommended by the mayor's office, and it was something you put on the list. But this is an actual cost of doing business, and I believe it was about $130,000. Dave, is that correct?
Yeah, it's highlighted up there.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm ready to vote on that one yet. I have a couple more questions I'd like to dig in with you on, if that's okay.
Not a problem.
Awesome. Okay.
I mean, I have one that I would be willing to vote on, seeing as it's a state grant, the Solar for All. I don't see why we wouldn't move forward with that. It's a state grant that they're offering to us. It just seems like a really solid, like, no-brainer to vote to support that and take it off the list.
What is the cost of supporting that to the county? I'm just curious.
0. It's a state grant. I shouldn't speak for the folks that have.
I think there has to be some management on the county side, correct?
It would be the work of Emily Taskett, who works on that. Go ahead, Gina.
Yeah, thanks, Dina.
Madam Chair.
Hold on just a second. Dina's coming up.
This is something that would be administered jointly between our Environmental Programs Division and our Housing and Community Development Division. And I would point out that the state was delighted for us to be a partner on this because they're looking to us to show them how to deploy these kinds of funds in the future. So there's more to it than just sort of achieving the face value name of the program.
Right. I think it's a good partnership with the state.
So would Emily Paskett be able to manage it, or would she have to have additional employees?
No,
to manage
it would all be managed by existing
So
employees.
there is no management
Nope,
fee.
there's no.
This is why we're asking the
Yeah.
question, because that was the concern that was brought up by the one person who wanted it on the list, and that there was additional cost to the county.
No.
In administering it, and so.
If there had been additional costs, we would have included that in it. We can absorb it within our existing structure. And one of the things we told the state we would do is probably seek a time reporting code so that we can track internally, not as an additional cost, but track internally how much it does cost to administer that program so that we can share with the state, this is what the actual costs are.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to amend my motion to include that if it's not a huge burden.
Okay, and then Amy wanted to speak, so Amy, go ahead.
And I'll
You know,
second it.
If we can do this next week, that would be great. I've got some specific questions over disposal of solar panels when this program's over and who's going to take care of them if the grant that, anyway, I've been talking to people on the state level and I'd love to be able to ask a few more questions. But anyway, if that would be good, I'll have the rest of the information I need to ask about by next week.
Sure. And I'm totally respectful of that, Amy. One, would you mind sharing if you get additional info? Because I think that would benefit all of us.
Sure, no problem.
Thanks.
I just want to point out the council member that put it on the list apparently is not here, so it would be nice if he was able to chime in as well. So next week,
Yeah.
I think would be great. Thank you.
That's what we were expecting.
Okay.
Yeah. So, okay.
So that motion's withdrawn.
That motion's withdrawn right now.
Correct.
What about Ken Gardner? That's it.
All right.
Should we talk about Ken Gardner, 50 grand?
Sure, bring Dana back up.
Oh, is it worth it or not?
You know, up to you
We
guys.
have this discussion every year, just so you know.
Yes.
Keep it every year.
Hey, you know, we're doing due diligence here.
Yes,
Do we
exactly.
still need it?
Well, it's something different this year, right?
I mean, I always benefit from those presentations and the resources, but
There was something on there that said we were going to be using for something specific this year. Is there something?
We've programmed 2024's dollars to expand on the community needs assessment in aging and adult services. So we're partnering with Paul Leggett on that project for 2024. 2025, we have not programmed anything because we don't do that until we know whether or not the funds are budgeted.
Sure.
But
Is
it's
this
going to
someplace
be,
we could look at what we could actually take a deep dive into what people want the county to be doing for them and look at that as an assessment.
So 2023, we did an economic analysis for arts and culture. That was part of it. So in keeping with the spirit of the Regional Projects Fund, it isn't just ORD's agenda. We actually reach out and coordinate with other divisions that need this kind of support. So for the past 2 years, that's what we've done. Arts and culture was in 2023. Aging and adult services is 2024. Many of you, I don't know if any of you came to our Regional Solutions event where we talked about aging in place. We've had a great partnership with the University of Utah and also AARP. And we're looking to continue that because really designing for an aging population is designing for every population. So it's just a good trend for us to be thinking about community building and placemaking in a way that makes sense for boomers. I think who was it that talked about the boomers at
Dave and I were, Jim and I were highly insulted.
the boomers and the youth, you know, would all benefit from that. So, yeah.
Apparently, we don't go downtown anymore.
It's okay. I felt bad too. I'm Gen X, so yeah.
We are downtown. We're in Salt Lake now.
Madam Chair, can I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead.
So if we didn't pay for a membership and we just needed things as needed, right? Like a la carte, did they even offer that? Or do we actually have to have a membership with Kim C. Gardner?
Well, it's two things. It's two different things. We do the research collaboration with them, but we also are part of their sort of supporting membership group, and that provides us with a lot of access to information we wouldn't have otherwise. So we really find it valuable. I mean, I think Kim Gardner is sort of the premier research firm working with a lot of government entities throughout the state. And so we get huge advantage of their statewide data that they pull for not even anything related to the county. And then we can actually drill down into their statewide data to get what we need for Salt Lake County. It's a really mutually beneficial relationship.
Where did they get their data?
Oh my gosh, they must have 20, 30 data subscriptions that we could never afford. CoreLogic, the Schiller housing stuff. I mean, Don Eskich himself has probably got 5 or 6 different data subscriptions that
Do
we
you
can't afford
mind
to do.
if we could get a copy of what data things that they pull from and that? 'Cause that would be helpful for this council to understand and know.
Because they also have unique access to basically anything in the state for the governor's office of planning and budget and, you know, the legislative auditor. Like they just have access to things that we could never possibly afford to get on our own.
Right.
So that relationship provides us with tremendous access.
Okay.
And then
That'd be great to
also-
understand.
Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
I think we often, like, this is a topic for another discussion, I think, when I look at our economic development impact. But when we're going to the legislature and sometimes we're in a position to go, you know, Mother May I like to remind them that we are the economic engine of the state. And because of how we're structured, part of it's historical, part of it's just maybe it's a transfer of profile for the county back when we were in the commission and going over 25 years ago now. But we don't really have that robust a regional operation as it relates to driving economy. We've been somewhat reliant on the Governor's Office of Economic Development. We're looking at statewide data most often. And I think it's our lifeblood to being really competent in this space. And another lifeblood is frankly Dina's expertise. She's relied, there are many who rely on her when we go into the session on transportation planning, regional planning, but also just on our ability with the office to do as Dina's suggesting, like work hand in hand with Gardner, utilizing the data they have. So I think what I'm trying to say is we're really underfunded and we rely on this relationship. And I think we're going to be like, we literally will be flying by the seat of our pants if we don't continue this relationship because we don't have access nor the FTEs or the broader portfolio of information to be effective. So I really think we're saving tenfold what we pay on this for not having to staff it all internally and enter into other more expensive contracts.
And I can only echo what the mayor just said, because I think, and the way I think about it is that we work smart. I mean, the municipal economic development activity that my agency used to do, right, before we started seeing closer to wall cities, we had different resources, we had more staff. We've really slimmed down to a very small economic development staff. And we really, our sort of motto is, are we working smart? And by working smart, it's finding the right relationships to people to partner with and organizations to partner with that can get us what we need without having to come to you and ask for $85,000 in a data subscription fee. I mean, that's sort of how we've been doing things really effectively, in our opinion, for the last 3 or 4 years. And we've been able to maintain our position, as the mayor mentioned, as having a real regional footprint in the area of housing and economic development, because I do think we're working smarter by having relationships that bring a huge value to us.
I think one of the things that helps me understand specifically what the value is understanding what is the data that they're getting, who are they getting it from, what is available to us specifically, because we hear about it, but as a council, we only see one presentation twice a year, right? And so for us, yeah, it's useful, but sometimes I feel like I can get the same thing someplace else. I know what you're saying, but because we get the trickle down effect. We get the 20-minute condensed version where I know you guys dig way in more. I know Darren's office digs way in more into some of the data and things that they give him. And so I think to be able to paint that picture of why it's vital and help us understand what value and why this is cheaper than going out and doing it on our own.
Yeah.
I think that's what we need to hear.
Well, and I will just mention then, what I'd be happy to provide is not only the data sets, because it isn't just data. They don't just give us data. We get analysis by, they have 23 staff people. So when we work with them to do a report, like for example, the property value, the argument about devaluation, when you build a multi-family development in a neighborhood that is primarily single-family homes, we were hearing all of this anecdotal information about it drives your property values down, And we said, well, fine, then we're going to do the research on it. And so we partnered with Kim Gardner, and we found out in every sector quadrant of the county, when a multifamily development is built in a neighborhood, the property values actually go up.
Yeah.
So it's that kind of thing. It's like the difficulty we have in debunking these anecdotal fears that are coming from the community or local elected officials. We feel really strongly, and we can reach out to Jahan, and he doesn't just give us the data. We get the data and their analysis, and usually it's a methodology that we sit down and together we map out what is the methodology that we would use in order to achieve the answers to those really, really difficult questions that we're hearing in the community.
Let me, if I may,
Go ahead.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve this based on the fact that information is golden. The cost of this resource for information is less than an FTE would be, and you probably need 10 people to fill that information gap. So it clearly does make sense. And I'm a little worried that I want to say this is a minor fiscal issue. We have a lot on the list, and I'm afraid we could dwell on this for a whole lot of time at the sake of really discussing, do we want to spend $9 million?
Well, I think that information can be sent to us by email, though. I just know that the person who put it on the list is not
Have you
here.
seen anything in the past that questions the Gardner Institute's performance for us.
Well, no, what I'm going to say is I have some additional questions, and so I'm hoping to
Well,
get
no,
the
there's questions
information.
on all of these
Well,
questions.
Can that be done offline?
Well, that's my intent, is to
Yeah.
do it offline and just vote on it next week.
I'm going to second that. And last year, another council member asked Dina why we couldn't do this in-house. She came back and gave us a very expansive explanation of what it would cost to do it in-house. The presentation that Gardner Institute gave at the COG last year over the demographics of the entire county were like nothing you've ever seen. It was a PowerPoint that did a deep dive into ethnic, into financial, into things that you would not see, and it came in one packet. It wasn't going out to this group for this and this group for this. It came to us for one packet, and that's got to be cost productive.
Well, and I'm assuming the presentation that was just given to COG this week also came from data that you got from.
That was a data relationship with a different entity, but Han Eskich, who is very, very interested, is we're trying to figure out, because it's the corporate ownership. Sorry, I shouldn't have shorthand here. What Council Chair Stringham's talking about is corporate ownership in Salt Lake County. It's a question all over the nation. Are large-scale investors gobbling up single-family detached homes primarily, which really started as a trend after the 2008-2009 housing bubble burst, right? And the biggest problem was that most of these institutional investors could not crack the nut, which is non-contiguous property management. It's not cost-effective for a large property management company to have a house here and a house there and a house here. They like big apartment buildings that have a revenue stream that justifies sending a lawn crew and a, repair crew and whatever. There's one company in the nation that figured out how to do this. Unfortunately, the way they figured out how to do it is they're oftentimes just paving over front yards or backyards, so they don't have to send a lawn crew. But they figured out how to make it profitable to do non-contiguous property management. And so what you're seeing is that this company has actually created a business line for many large-scale developers and investors that had never existed before. So the concern was, oh my gosh, these big mega corporations and institutional investors are going to start gobbling up homes all over the nation. And what is that going to do to our affordability? And what's it going to do to the cost of living for people, right? And to buy homes. So we thought, okay, we're hearing all of this anxiety at the legislature, at the Utah League of Cities and Towns, and even at UAC. So we put in our budget a request to get this information done, and we did it. And it includes data sets, I'll tell you.
Very fascinating.
It includes our own recorder and assessor information, which has never been done in the nation. And the county, Salt Lake County, was the first county to cooperate with Lincoln Land Institute to get this data. It took us a year to do the data cleaning. I mean, that's the big problem. But what we found is that Salt Lake County is not seeing a huge influx of this. Certain areas of Salt Lake County might be primarily because of their proximity to tourist attractions, the canyons, right? So you're seeing a lot of short-term rentals that also come into play with these purchases. So those are the policy discussions that are happening at the Commission on Housing Affordability and lots of other places. But we're the only ones that decided it was important to get the data on this instead of making policy decisions on fear and anxiety and anecdotes. That makes no sense. We want to support sound policy decision-making, and to do that, we have to have the data. It also includes vacancies. So the U.S. Postal Service is part of that data set we use. So we could actually work with the municipalities to say, you have 11 vacant properties that are likely nuisance properties in your community. Well, guess what? Our Housing and Community Development Program has rehab money. So let's figure out how to target these nuisance properties in your community and make them available for affordable housing.
Well, this is really, I'm going to actually have you come and I would invite you back next year under whoever ends up being chair, And we'll go
Are
from
you
there.
comfortable taking a bet that this will work? Or it's a good
Well, and
idea?
policy decisions are being made because HOAs are starting to put in requirements in their HOA that you cannot sell. That it has to be an individual homeowner and they have to live in the property for X number of years. So policy decisions are being made.
Yeah, they are being made, so.
So Madam Chair,
Yes,
I
go ahead.
don't want to throw cold water on all of this, but I do want
we're
to
good.
remind you that last year, the problem that we had was that we had this new policy regarding contributions, and we're trying to parse where things fell and how they were going to be handled. And what Dina was able to do was to say, I'll go out on an RFI and I will be able to award, on the basis of competition. And that was satisfactory to some of the council members who were concerned that in this particular case, notwithstanding their excellent work, that we had a relationship with Kim Gardner that basically, was a monopoly. And so if you're going to have a research collaboration, are you going to have a research collaboration with Kim Gardner? And if that's so, is that a contribution? Or are you going to say, no, we're going to have a research collaboration with whomever is the best and continue to have it compete on an RFP basis or not? Because fundamentally, we
That
still
was
have
the
this
concern
contribution.
And that is actually that is actually the concern of the person that put it on the list.
Right.
That was the point, not does he do a good job?
So can I
This is a
provide
membership,
clarification
isn't
on
it?
this? It's a membership. So I want to say, I believe
talking
it was
about
Amy.
research collaboration.
I understand. But Amy Winder Newton, Councilwoman Newton, I think she's on the call, brought this up, I think it was 3 years ago. And I actually appreciate it because it allowed us and sort of forced us to look at our budget more carefully about what were we categorizing as contributions and were they really contributions? And in many cases, they are not. I mean, when I look at contribution, I look at two definitions. There's one in county ordinance or county policy, and then I look at the IRS, right? What would you be able to get a deduction for? And we were finding that memberships were being categorized, at least in my budget, as contributions inappropriately. So the very first year, we reviewed all of that and appropriately categorized the things that were truly contributions in contributions. And if there was a membership, it's a membership. And how we distinguish that is, I'll give you an example. The chamber contribution was called a contribution in, I think, 2001 and 2000, or 2020, 22 and 21. Well, we get something from them. We get tables at events. That's not a contribution. That would not qualify as a contribution under most definitions of contribution. So we moved it into the membership category, which is where it should be, because the county receives a benefit from that. It's not a pure contribution.
Yeah, and I'm not opposed to saying take 50,000 and buy the membership and set aside the other 50,000 now. And if we want to go forward and put a all call for.
That's what we did this year.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's how we handled it this year.
Yeah. So anyway.
And I think we gave that explanation to Dave. I'm sure Dave shared that email with all.
I'm just eager to get some of the easy stuff off the list. It seems easier. It seemed easy before I started it.
So the membership is fine. That's coming out of memberships. That's a regular budget. I think the concern was the other, right? So.
Okay, can I just say something real quick? I feel like there's value in this, but I don't think we can approve it today. I know some of you probably want to, but I think there's members that aren't here today that still want their input next week. So with respect to that, I would.
Well, I've got a
wait on
concern
this.
with that. Everybody had the option to be here today.
I agree.
And Amy
I
phoned
agree.
in.
So
So
I
we
was-
meet and we deal with what's on our plate.
We do have a motion. We have a standing motion right now. Who was my second
That's a
on
good
that?
point, but there's not much we can do about
Who
it.
was the second on that?
I was.
Yeah, I
Okay,
mean,
just double checking. I couldn't remember.
All right.
Okay, I have a motion, a second, and we have to vote because we do have a motion, and a second on the table. So if
Okay.
you don't want to deal with it, I would vote
How many
no.
are here?
That's up to you.
Well, I'm trying to be
There's 6 of
respectful
us.
to the person that put it on the list, but at the same time, we need to move. So, I don't know. I mean, go ahead and vote.
Call for the.
I will call for a roll call vote then.
We need to recognize our secretary and
Yes.
everything she
Yes.
goes through.
Councilmember Theodore? Okay, I'm going to vote no right now just because it's kind of a silly situation, but I do want to
That's
support
fine.
this, but I have to vote no in respect for who put it on the list. That's it, okay?
Councilmember Granado,
Yes.
Councilmember Winder Newton,
Aye.
Councilmember Harrison,
Yes.
Councilmember Bradley,
Yes.
Councilmember Stringham,
And I'm a no for the same reason that D is, because of the council member who's not here.
4-2.
Yeah, it passes though.
All right, number 6. Or is that it for the day?
Well, I believe Amy asked if you could wait on that because she had some questions, but
Oh, I thought Amy said yes.
No, she
Not on
said she had some questions on the other.
At the board.
No, and a minute ago, I thought the council, after we discussed it, we weren't going to go through these, but happy about the other one getting through. So I don't know. It's your prerogative, but I do think.
You know, we've got about
The roulette
40
of showing up to
minutes.
council.
It is the roulette of showing up to council.
Can we take off what we voted on and see what's left?
Sure. Is that the whole list right there?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
If we're going to go through
With the
this
exception of
list,
the FTEs.
I think we've told people that we were going to go through the list next week. So we want to give people a chance to answer questions. Some of these are much more complicated. They're not as simple. So I think we've taken care of most of the simple things on the list now. I think we ought to
Who would
actually
that
wrap
be?
it up. And
Who would feel disappointed?
Not in public now.
oh, good heavens. So, is there any additional business before the council in this meeting?
Are we meeting downstairs? for the-
No, Board of Canvassers has been advertised in this room, so we'll be meeting in here. Yep.
No, what now?
That's what I thought I saw. Am I wrong?
Well, one other thing I'd like to acknowledge
Room
our Councilwoman-elect
M2800 is what it
Natalie
says.
Pinkney, who's here, whose
welcome.
election will
I'm
be
sorry.
certified in
Just
half an hour. So congratulations. And to all the candidates who had the courage to put their names on a ballot, congratulations to them as well. It takes a lot of courage.
It is up here. Yeah, I thought so. So, yeah, we'll be back here at 4:00 and I'll declare this, it's in here. Yeah, I'll declare this meeting adjourned with that exception. Thank you. Yep.
You got your 170,000 above and beyond the mayor.
It's like, Jim, I like your stationery.
Well, that came from the commission.